Welcome to Whodunit Hall. Usually Edgeworth the butler will be here showcasing a piece from the Master's collection of mystery films. Unfortunately, he's come down with a case of the flu and kindly asked me to take over for today. Allow me to introduce myself. My name is Abigail. I'm a downstairs maid here in the halls, and today I want to show something that I found in the Master's collection that surprised me, and it took inspiration from Dame Agatha Christie. Yes, Edgeworth has talked about Miss Agatha Christie with And Then There Were None. Yet her mystery novels have been inspirations to other creators, or in this case, an adaptation of a comic book, which was then adapted onto the small screen on a television show called Tales from the Crypt. Tales from the Crypt was a horror anthology series that aired on HBO from 1989 to 1996. The series, hosted by the Cryptkeeper, showcased tales of horror, mystery, and suspense. One of these episodes, though, a bit inspired by Agatha Christie, was an adapted comic book issue based on a whodunit mystery. Tonight, we take a look at the episode Werewolf Concerto. After the iconic opening, the Cryptkeeper showcases a little experiment.
This is your brain. This is your brain on drugs. And this is your brain after watching Tales from the Crypt.
Oddly enough, this is what happens to Master's ninth ex-wife. An unfortunate accident with mallets and a juggling act gone wrong. The Cryptkeeper introduces today's tale, where we see a man running from something inhuman. At least it was the Master's Grey Wolves. They don't have the power to rip someone's head off. Unless it was the Master's Falcon. He's only done that twice so far. We cut to a hotel in the middle of the woods, the setting in our tale, where we're introduced to the hotel owner, Mr. Antoine, and the guest.
3 people have been murdered at your hotel. I would like to know what you are doing about it, what the authorities are doing about it.
I am leaving. This is bullshit. Send the kid for my bags.
I'm afraid last night's storm has made that impossible. A mudslide is completely blocking the highway.
Wait a minute. That means the police can't get in. There's a killer stalking this place. Killer? Is that what you think? What's the matter with you people? Why can't you admit it? It's a wolf. A werewolf.
Mr. Antoine calms the guests down, telling them he has hired a werewolf hunter who wants to remain anonymous to hunt the creature down. The camera pans to Timothy Dalton, playing Mr. Lakai, the mentioned werewolf hunter.
You know what they say about a man who does that to his ice, don't you?
Yeah. We can always count on him to lick the competition.
Something like that.
And this is how the Master met his 5th ex-wife. She was unpleasant.
The Bowl, August 91.
Hollywood's a depressing town. I try not to keep track.
Janice Baird performs Mussorgsky's Pictures at an Exhibition in G major.
Kind of old for a groupie, aren't we?
The sun's coming up. Why don't we discuss it over breakfast?
I don't do breakfast.
Me neither. It's amazing how much we've got in common. Lunch?
Nope.
Dinner?
Nada.
20 questions naked in the bathtub? Say around midnight?
Who's back to the faucet?
Mine, of course.
You just won yourself a prize, groupie. Room 212, around midnight.
The last time a gentleman tried to court me with one of those tactics, I sliced his hand off with a sword. I warned him several times, but he just wouldn't listen. What? Mr. Lakai then pays Peter, the busboy, on any information that comes by before heading off to rest. Afternoon arrives with Lakai entering the dining room for lunch, joining Mercedes and her husband for a meal.
Either of you seen Mr. Hertz today?
Mr. Hertz? What a curious question. Why do you ask?
He's a curious man. He seemed rather uptight last night.
Weren't we all?
Good afternoon, Mr. Lokai.
Hello, Wolfgang. Now, what's for lunch?
We have a wonderful salmon en croûte with a dill sauce, and we have a quail on baby greens, and I made a special frittata for you with baby vegetables and a hint of fennel. It's delicious.
You, Got a cheeseburger?
Cheeseburger?
I remember one time Eustace asked the chef to have that for a meal one day. In retaliation, the chef made all the houseboys' meals raw until he finally apologized. Believe me when I say you don't want to cross him.
Who do you think the mysterious werewolf hunter could be?
It seems to me that that is the wrong question. And one, might I add, that would only be important to a particular person.
And who might that be?
The werewolf himself? Or herself?
Aren't you even just the least bit curious?
Curious. In a situation like this, curiosity only gets you one place, and that's dead. Ask Mr. Bailey.
Oh, God, poor Mr. Bailey. He was such a nice man.
He was.
We were just starting to become friendly.
That's a very revealing photo.
Oh dear. As I learned working here in the halls, taking group photos always lead to terrible accidents. Happened at the master's last dinner party. It wasn't a pretty sight.
Doing a bit of sleuthing yourself, Mr. Lokai?
Just got an eye for detail. Isn't that right, Carl?
Excuse me?
Please, sit down, join us. You seem to be quite the expert on werewolves. Have you changed professions since we last met?
That master of yours is going to get you in trouble someday, Mr. Lokai. People don't like it.
Do I detect a threat in that mouthful of cliches, Reject?
I would like to know what you're doing here.
A relaxing Carl on your money. He hates losing, but he's so damned good at it.
Do not interfere with me again. Is that clear?
That's okay, Carl. We'll talk later, just you and me.
Mr. Etchek leaves the hotel with his belongings, just as Mr. Lokai checks on Janice, only to discover her hotel room door open and no trace of her in sight. Hearing a commotion outside, Mr. Lokai looks out the window to spot Mr. Hertz in one direction and Mr. Mryczek in another. He heads outside to find one of the two, until Mr. Hertz surprises him, gun in hand.
Now, where's Reject? We wouldn't want him to miss the party.
Reject won't be coming.
No, I suppose he won't. High price to pay. I knew the little ape had something on someone.
Yeah, he had a secret, all right. He kept his nose a little too far up the wrong arse and started sniffing around. Kind of like you.
Really? That's funny. I've always considered myself to be more of a leg man.
You played games with me. Reject. He liked games. Only thing is, he lost.
Well, that's the difference between Carl and me. You see, I never lose.
After dispatching the gun, Lokai shoots at Mr. Hertz and discovers money in the satchel. Believing him to be the werewolf, the case is closed. Or is it? Lokai heads back to the hotel, where Peter approaches him with some news.
This fax just came in from Mr. Reject. The authorities sent down 2 agents to the hotel, just like he said they would. Mr. Reject's going to collect reward money.
Reward for what?
For the information they sent him on Hertz.
What information? What information?
Mr. Reject has proof that Hertz is a Nazi.
What are you talking about?
Mr. Hertz is a Nazi war criminal. Mr. Reject has pictures. I saw them.
No. How could I have been so stupid?
It's alright, Mr. Lokai, we all make mistakes. Except for the one time Miss Aubergine bought an entire boar. Took us 2 weeks to finish it off, and we were sick of boar for a year. Realizing his mistake, Mr. Lokai checks on the guest and notices Janice isn't there. He asks Peter where she is, but he says she never left the hotel. Thinking she may be the werewolf, Lokai heads to her room, just as a shot of the full moon is shown. And I'm afraid I had to leave it here, with only 5 minutes left of the episode to avoid the conclusion and spoilers. After viewing the episode, I'm afraid to say, as an inspiration to Dame Agatha Christie, this one doesn't do a good job. Werewolf Concerto feels like a piece of a full-length film rather than a naturally told story. We entered the episode with 3 murders already taking place, with a little screen time for all the suspects who may be the werewolf. The acting is excellent, with Timothy Dalton being the best since we follow his character the most, but it wasn't enough to save this. As for the mystery itself, if you pay attention, it's easy to figure out the conclusion in the first 10 minutes. It leaves the twist at the end dull and predictable. Overall, this is one I recommend you pass. If you are interested in checking the conclusion of this episode, you can find it on Season 4 of Tales from the Crypt on DVD. The Master bought his copy around $14 to $20, I believe. Now I have to draw this to a close. If you excuse me, I need to make sure that Edgeworth is doing 100% well so he can host next time around. Hopefully you'll join us again and take a look more at the Master's collection here at Whodunit Hall.
Eustace?
Get me the disinfectant suit and the chicken noodle soup. We need to make sure that Edgeworth is doing well.